On today's Rebel's Edge, Trump's tariffs are tossed a curveball by the International Court of Trade, but the president's got a few more tricks up his sleeve. Nvidia earnings crush once again as the undisputed leader in AI chips reports a 70% year-over-year top-line increase. And finally, Veeva Veeva Systems crushes the street's estimates as it integrates artificial intelligence into its SaaS platform for the pharmaceutical industry. We'll cover all of that and more live from Cardone Studios on today's Rebel's Edge.
Well, just another 400-point opener.
Yeah,
those feel a lot better than the 400-point declines, don't they, folks?
Yeah, they do.
I'm John Najarian. That guy right there ain't Pete Najarian. That is the CEO of Market Rebellion, Marc LoPresti. You might see him on Saturday morning TV shows as well because he's been hosting over at Newsmax, right?
Yeah, and not cartoons. I mean, usually if it was me in Saturday morning TV, it was cartoons. But yeah, no, having a lot of fun doing some morning shows on the network these days. They're testing out how much they can curb my normal nocturnal activities. It's so far it's working out fairly well, but it remains to be seen. But yeah, great to be with you, John. Here from, of course, the amazing, fantastic Cardone 10X Studios in Aventura, Florida. And why are we here? We are here because we have 10X WealthCon.
Yep.
Saturday
and we've got a fabulous event tomorrow for VIPs that I can't even tell you guys all about. We'll have to show you video of it after the fact because for VIPs.
Yeah.
But it's Marc and his team put together this fabulous event. Grant's going to be flying in from Bitcoin 2025. So
yeah,
we might have a lot of jets. Let's just say that. A lot of jets, maybe a helicopter or two. It'll be fantastic. But Marc, let's talk about the market being up 400 points right out of the get-go. And the catalyst was indeed, folks, Nvidia. And as I said yesterday, it's hard finding words that rhyme with Nvidia, Marc. Pete won't let me say the other word that I came up that rhymes with Nvidia.
I'm sure I don't want to know.
No, you don't want to know. But they came out with some earnings. Before we get to that, though, let's hit Macro Minute.
Yeah.
Macro Minute, folks, is really that a court has told the president once again that he can't do what he says he can do, and that is through executive caveat or whatever.
Executive
Marc,
order, yeah.
That he says, I can basically put these tariffs on countries for not complying with fairness and so forth, and court disagreed with him.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing, John. President Trump enacted these tariffs under an Emergency Powers Act, which gives the president the ability by executive order to do things like impose these tariffs. The court said that's unconstitutional. It's a misuse of that Emergency Powers Act. It was actually not the first, but the third time that a U.S. president has used it, but not recently. Mm-hmm. But the president can turn around, and I fully expect him to, by the way, use one of three, and I hate to put the lawyer hat on here, but there are three other provisions that give the president the ability to reenact these tariffs and still comply with the U.S. Court of Trade's order. This thing is not over. I think the street knows that, and that's why I think the bigger buoyancy, the bigger catalyst for today's rally is, as you say, Nvidia's earnings.
Yeah, well, let's talk fantastic futures.
Let's do it.
Because fantastic futures, yesterday I talked about nat gas, how it was down. It did rebound, but it's down again today. That's good news, though, folks, unless you happen to be a holder of that $1 million contract for natural gas, because that's how big they are per million British thermal unit or BTU. This is good news because whether it's power generation or whether it's just for backyard grilling, we all want to see natural gas prices lower, and right now we are.
Yeah.
What do you got for fantastic?
Yeah, well, look, as always, we're watching the VIX, right? I mean, I hope that we have trained loyal watchers of the Rebel's Edge to understand how important it is to keep a close eye on that particular index. It's actually up a little bit, John, from when we were looking at it just before we went live, just crossing $19 40 cents right now. It was as low as 18 and change this morning. Under a 20 handle is good. I think this confusion about what the president's next move may be on this tariff response to the International Court of Trade is part of what's muting the bullish activity a bit here today. And then, of course, the other thing I'm looking at is oil, right? Oil trading a little bit higher today, but still down a lot more than our friends in the Permian would like if you're in the refining business. The midstream players don't care, but I think that we're going to continue to see oil prices remain muted through the summer. Good news for drivers. Why? OPEC's talking about putting 411,000 more barrels into production that first week of July, just in time for the July 4th driving season. That's what I got in futures.
Tommy Norris and the guys in the Permian aren't happy.
No.
And yes, that is a Landman reference. Love Tommy Norris. Love Landman. Love Tyler Sheridan. The guy's hitting it so hard, Marc.
Crazy.
But I just love his shows. Lioness, if you haven't seen it yet.
Tulsa King.
Another one. Tulsa King with Stallone. All right. Nvidia. We're finally getting to Nvidia, and this is a blowout. There's no two ways about it. Even with President Trump's tariff liberation and so forth, and the prior administration's restriction of sales by Nvidia to China and so forth. Nonetheless, Marc, they put up a number, 69% year-over-year revenue growth.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. I don't care what business you're in. That's phenomenal. And this was enough to pop the stock back up over 140. Keep in mind, on the lows, it was below 100 just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, do not try to get in front of this Nvidia bull train, folks. Look, I was asked about this on my SiriusXM show on Tuesday morning, Monday morning as well. I have a lot of other people saying, well, you know, it depends, the forward guidance, it looks expensive. I said, no. This thing is going to beat the street's expectations. It's going to do well. The forward guidance is going to be good. Why? I've said this 1,000 times. We are not using or creating less data, folks. We're not. And what do things like what the president did on Friday with that executive order about reducing regulatory red tape for getting nuclear power plants, both large and small, back online? What does that mean? More power for data centers. More data centers can be built. More can be plugged in. And what are they going to need? They're going to need Nvidia chips. And that ain't stopping, folks.
Yep. And Oklo, a stock that Marc has pounded the table for and that we've seen a lot of unusual activity in, OKLO. That one just zooming through the 50 handle just a day ago.
Yeah. Number one performer on the NAS last year, 1,300% on that stock. That's a bang and a half.
That's a banger. All right. VEEV, Veeva Systems. Marc said in the cold open that these guys have AI for basically data centers and so forth. Well, indeed, what they came up with was a blowout of the earnings per share. The revenue was also above street expectations, and VEEV, because of those multiple EEV in there, some people may think, well, it's an electric vehicle. Nope.
New.
This is instead something for an AI play that RBC says thumbs up to them.
Yeah, and look, so what these guys are actually a SaaS, software as a solution provider for the pharmaceutical industry primarily.
Yep.
And what they do with AI is use the power of AI to help companies that are doing things like clinical trials and trying to get new drugs into the marketplace to use artificial intelligence to do that stuff faster with less human interaction. It's clear, John, that some of the smartest people in the world that have been following AI, some of the folks we were on stage with last week at the Wall Street conference, Paul Jeffries, who was the number 4 guy at Facebook, our friend Kajita, who was one of the founders of ChatGPT, all of these people said healthcare is going to be one of the sectors to benefit in the immediacy from the use of artificial intelligence, because we can bring a modernization component to the development of new drugs and drug trials that is not going to be seen at that magnitude in other industries. Veeva is obviously one of the beneficiaries of that. Kudos.
Huge.
Yeah, kudos to investors in that stock today.
Yep, best quarter ever for VEEV, folks. All right, HPQ. So any of the peripherals that you might think that Hewlett-Packard Compaq, the former name, was into, well, these guys came out with guidance in the range of 68 to 80 cents. Now, that wouldn't be so bad, except the street the collective analysts on the street were looking for 90 cents. Oof. And so on the high end, you're going to miss it by a lot. Yeah. And on the low end, it's going to be a disaster. That's why this stock is cratering right now in the regular session.
Yeah, and then that's part of the reason why, tariffs don't treat all companies equally. You got to dig a little bit deeper. You have to look at their supply chain. You have to look at who they're reliant on. HP, this is a company that I think by and large kind of needs to do a better job of getting into the game with the latest tech and AI and things of that nature. Not necessarily surprised to see this. This is a company that is clearly being hurt by higher tariff costs. UBS lowering its price target, not helping, but that is a major miss. Not surprised to see the sell-off today.
How about Burlington, BURL? This is one that many of us would say, well, more or less a competitor to TJ Maxx and Marshall's. Used to be Burlington Coat Factory. Now it's Burlington Stores. It's a more accurate depiction of what they are because they're not just a coat factory. And they came out with great earnings. And in fact, the stock was pretty much off to the races on these earnings, Marc, because tariffs could have had an impact here, but because of how they sourced their stuff and because of how they accounted for some of the costs of that stuff that they sourced, this was just a tremendous quarter for them. So the shares moving higher.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted story, and part of it is something we may want to consider covering on another show. There is actually an accounting loophole, some might call it, that a lot of smart CFOs are using to sort of mask. I shouldn't say mask because it's an accounting loophole that is still consistent with generally accepted principles that allows you to kind of smooth over your cost of goods sold. I think that's what Burlington did here. The CEO in as much said that. Really interesting, but in the woods, not enough time to cover that today. But the other part of the story is the American consumer. If people weren't still buying stuff at Burlington, regardless of how their finessed accounting may be, we would not be seeing these numbers. The American consumer remains strong. It's a good thing for the economy.
Well, and the stock had closed at 238.50 last night. It exploded all the way up to 259.
Oh my gosh.
But then sold off. It gave up a lot of that, well, all of that gain from exactly what Marc just cited, because the CFO said, well, yeah, we sort of smooth this out.
Little Larry David accounting there. I love that.
Well, but as you said, under GAAP principles, they were able to do that. Right. It made sense to do it. But then when people saw it, they said, well, maybe I don't want to own it up here $30 higher than where it closed.
Well, maybe I'll take profit. Nobody ever went broke taking profit. Take profit when you can, folks. Don't cry about the dollar you didn't make. Pocket the one you did.
Be disciplined about profits as well as losses, folks. That's good advice from Uncle Marc.
Oh, God.
All right. Let's talk about sports with Pete Najarian.
I can't wait to hit these sports, John, but I also can't wait for the video. I'm excited about this one today because I've already seen it, and you've created a monster in this whole thing. So let's take a look and see what it looks like. This guy's nuts.
Here are some of the weirdest NFL facts that honestly just confuse the shit out of me. The Seattle Seahawks are the only NFL team to play in both the NFC and AFC championship. Dan Marino played 242 games in his 17-year NFL career and only had 87 career rushing yards. On the flip side of that, Ryan Fitzpatrick led the 2019 Dolphins in rushing yards.
I know him well. He does not run well.
Don Hudson once scored 4 touchdowns and kicked 5 extra points to make up 29 points scored in a single quarter.
I love the intensity of this freaking guy.
Kicked an extra point and a field goal.
He's committed.
Recording a catch in the
ready.
NFL. Barry Sanders has the most negative rushing yards in history with negative 952 and still ranks 4th all-time in rushing yards. That's why Barry is the motherfucking GOAT. In 2010, Brett Favre became the first and only active NFL player to be a grandpa. Also, let's not forget that Favre's first career completion was to himself. Jim Harbaugh has more career NFL rushing yards than Bo Jackson. Who can forget the legendary Jerome Bettis stat line, 5 rushes for 1 yard and 3 touchdowns. The Chicago Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer, but now that they have Caleb Williams, They still don't
They
have a
still
4,000-yard pass. In 2002, despite having 422 yards of offense to Houston's 47, the Steelers still lost 24-6. In 1998, Falcons defensive back Eugene Robinson was given the Bart Starr Award for a player who exemplifies outstanding character and leadership. Hours later, he was arrested for soliciting companionship from an undercover cop. The night before the Falcons played
it was
the
a
Super
dude.
Bowl, but he
You
was
can't
released
make
and
it up.
didn't play. I didn't say he played well. Did you also know the longest punt in Eagles history is by quarterback Randall Cunningham?
I do
Who am I
remember
kidding?
that.
Nothing is topping the Eugene Robinson story.
That was a long one.
That was. That guy
He's
was
right about everything. I mean, those numbers are unreal, guys. I mean, honestly, if you think about some of those things, and the Barry Sanders makes a lot of sense because we know anybody who ever watched him, I had to try to tackle him, but anybody who's ever watched the guy play, let me tell you something. He is all over the map, and sometimes he's 15, 20 yards deep before he finally gets going and gets around the corner. So pretty amazing to hear about that whole thing. All right, let's just jump into some college football then, because college football really has turned into NFL football, right? I mean, these guys get paid money. They got a portal so that they can go anywhere for free agency. I mean, it really is basically the NFL. It just happens to be attached to a school now. But how about this? And John, you'll appreciate this one because the Texas athletic director is kind of ticked off, and he's disputing the fact that they have spent $40 million on their roster this year. That's a 4 with a 0, $40 million. A lot of people say, well, it's not that much, and he's one of them. He's denying that they paid that much, but a lot of folks out there are saying that the number probably is a little bit less than that, so they're throwing it closer to $35 million that Chris Del Conte, the athletic director, has doled out to sports. And that's just football. It's not all of sports, it's just football. So the revenue sharing thing that they're all talking about, and I know it's complicated and you guys haven't probably had a chance to look at it. I have. Basically, it's doing what, John, I've been pitching for a while now. And what is that? Let's put a cap on this whole damn thing. And the cap can move after the first year, but the cap does move somewhere either up or down. And right now it's $20.5 million. So how does it get all distributed? Basically, it's going like this: 75% football, 15% goes to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, and 5% to all others. And I don't know, a lot of people might not like that, but let's take a look at, well, who generates the money for the school? All you've got to do is, if you want to be fair, that's fair. And when you put 100,000 people in a stadium and that money is coming rolling in, and meanwhile, your lacrosse team, I love lacrosse as much as anybody else, but pick your sport, track, whatever. They're not money generators. They're money eaters, and they're eating the money that's coming basically from football and basketball, and in cases like Minnesota, hockey. So I really think it is the fair model for them to be able to use that whole thing. What do you guys think about it, though? I've been calling for a cap since day one, and it looks like we're getting really, really close to the cap, which makes a hell of a lot of sense because you can't have Ohio State and Texas A&M and Nebraska paying the amounts of money that they have been paying, and everybody else who doesn't have that kind of money can't do the same thing. So I do think this makes it fair.
Well, you can have that, Pete, except it's going to turn into Formula One, right?
Yeah.
There's only 3 teams that matter. The rest is total horseshit. Nobody's watching. That's not good for college football. By the way, it's not the NFL, it's the NIL. That's what I'm calling college football these days.
And Pete, what I would say also is that Craig James and Eric Dickerson, for those who are of a certain vintage like me, they remember the Pony Express. That's what they used to call those guys at SMU. And I'm thinking, Pete, those guys, they paid those guys nearly as much money as Texas is paying right now. So all it is life imitating art and so forth.
There's a lot of schools out there who NIL just used to be illegal, and now it became legal by just slapping on their NIL. So, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's one school, I won't point out who they were, but people have heard me talk about it in the past. Our coaches went to go take a look and see what things were looking like over at, because we'd already played 2 games they hadn't played yet, this particular school. So they said, come down, you can get the film, you can watch a practice, you can do anything you want. So they go down there, 3 coaches. They came back and they said, hey, forget about the videos. Did you see the parking lot? These guys are driving around in, Mercedes-Benz and Rolls-Royces and Ferraris and whatever else. I'll just say this. They used to be part of what was the Big 12, and they're in a southern part of that whole thing. But anyway, they seem to have a lot of players that had some really good parents that gave them great cars, apparently. Something like that anyway. All right. Next one up is the NBA. Who should be the face of the NBA? Who is the face of the NBA? And I've got a name for you because I think it's that simple. I think it's Anthony Edwards. Why do I think that? Well, let's see. He's been there now.
Minnesota, that's why.
He's 23 years old, right? He's 23 years old. He's been in the NBA now for 5 years. He's improved every single year. He started off, he had 19 points a game. Now he's got 27 points a game. 32% three-point shooter, 39% now. 41% field goals, 44% now. The guy has played in the last 3 years. He's played in 79 games in each of the last 3 years. There's only 82 in a season. So the reason he is the face of the NBA is he stands for everything that I'm not saying he's Michael Jordan, but he stands for everything Michael Jordan did, Kobe Bryant did. And I think if you're in that kind of category, you probably should represent the NBA as the face of it, because this guy does not believe in this whole load management crap and everything else. He's also colorful. He's really confident. He rarely says terrible things that every once in a while. He'll throw out some F-bombs and everything else. But, other than that, this guy is everything you'd want the NBA to be. So you guys tell me, am I right? Not just because he's Minnesota, but is he the face of the entire league?
Well, I'm going to say yes, and he should be, because as you said yesterday, Pete, the NBA is likely facing down the barrel of OKC, Oklahoma, against the Pacers. And most people can't name a lot of players on those teams.
Well, I was going to ask Pete, since I'm at the NBA, my New York Knicks, Pete, I mean, tonight, what do you think? Is John right?
You know what? I think Indiana has just played so spectacularly. I mean, they really have. And you know what? The Knicks kind of feel a little bit like the Timberwolves. They're there. They're good. They just can't close the daggone thing up. And I think that's the problem that they face. I hope I'm wrong, because I'd like to see for the NBA, I'd like to see New York in there. The ratings will be a lot higher if New York's in there. And as I said to John yesterday, the worst thing that could happen is to have OKC in Indiana and basically sit very close to the very bottom in terms of viewership potential or whatever. So they need to have the Knicks in there. But I just don't know if they've got it, Mark. I love them. I love how they play. Hey, Karl Anthony Towns, one of my favorite guys, former Timberwolf. He was part of the trade. He's a great guy, a great player, 7-footer who can shoot threes, but he just hasn't stepped up enough either.
I mean, you talk about threes. I mean, Pete, that game against Boston last week, which I think had one of the highest viewerships in NBA history, I have not seen so many three-pointers successfully made by a New York team since the Harlem Globetrotters were on the hardwood
Which
floor.
is a New York team.
Which is a New York team. Yes, yeah, absolutely. But look, I'm not giving up on my New York Knicks.
No. You shouldn't. You got to pull for him. I was pulling for my Timberwolves till I saw him down by about 30 in the first quarter, and I said, you know what? This game might be over. John, they scored 9 points in the first quarter, the Timberwolves. They just couldn't get it done.
No, OKC is just good, Pete. Yep. Really, really good. Yep. All right, well, thank you for tuning in, folks. Marc, are you going to be on this weekend on
No, well, I'm not going to be. I've told our friends over at Newsmax. By the way, thank you, Pete, for that amazing sports segment coming in live from Minnesota. We'll be watching the game tonight from the Hard Rock Hotel Casino here in Miami, where we're having dinner. Bang, tonight with some good friends. I will not be on Newsmax morning shows this weekend because we'll be a few blocks away from here at the incredible JW Marriott Turnberry Isle, where we will be sharing the stage with, of course, Grant Cardone and many others at 10X Wealth. If you don't have tickets yet to 10X Wealth, well, you're doing something wrong. Kind of like rooting for the Knicks to lose tonight. So just drop it in your browser. You just put in 10X Wealth. It pops right up. It'll bring you to a landing page, or call your favorite Marc Rebellion sales rep. We would love to see you here in Aventura, Florida, Saturday and Sunday of this weekend.
Bang. We'll see you on Monday, folks, from these Cardone studios.
That's right.